Welcome. Sarabella, you're gonna pin Tanji and I if that's needed. Hello, Tanji.
Hello.
Uh, Welcome everyone. We are here in our last session of the winter Messy Conversations. Our season ends today, and we restart our sessions on July 13. The flyer is in a chat. We're gonna put it again. So you have a sense of the dates. You save the dates, and we will share details with you as the time comes by. Uh, I'm welcoming Tanji here. Thank you for joining us. I'm just gonna share a few announcements and just jump in, okay? So we still welcome members for the volunteer members, people that would like to join the Messy Conversations team. We are a very open group serving the entire university community with these opportunities for these spaces. So you're welcome. You can reach out to our email that is here in case you want to reach out, be part of this adventure that is Messy Conversations. Um, as a reminder for the format for the session, some people I recognize, some people in the room that might not have been here recently. Our Messy Conversations go the first half hour, gonna be conversation with Tanji and you and I back and forth, and then the second half we're gonna open the room for your questions, comments, complaints, or anything in between. Our topic has to do with the in between today. And then we're gonna do that, just that in many ways. We're talking about activism from the cracks, the idea of in between that we are learned from Anzaldúa's frameworks. Just as a reminder for you guys, Anzaldúa is an American poet, philosopher, scholar, and feminist that was born and raised in circumstances that frame very extreme marginalized experiences. And from that emerged a voice, very unique voice. She was born in the 40s in the US. So that voice was generated combining genres. If you're a poet or you're a writer, you combine genres, you end up in one single page. You can have autobiography or essay, poetry, mythology, and combine any gender that is possible to be part of it. So there are many ways to understand why it's important for us. You can find Anzaldúa in almost every syllabi in many many courses in Antioch that I'm aware of. So we are coming back to this, and Tanji and I started having this conversation about the Anzaldúa every year around this time because we are honoring her passing May 15, 2004. And it's an opportunity for us to just go get a tiny piece of insights because so rich. Just a tiny piece of insight is enough for us to keep running with it. Um, so, Tanji, we were a few months ago talking about disorientation. And this disorientation meant that when you are disoriented, you pull the brake, pause, and then I told Tanji, so pausing means like inaction, just stay quiet, just don't do anything. What does it mean, inaction? And Tanji, you brought up this idea of Nepantla. Remember that Nepantla is this term that you serves the purpose of understanding that activism and the pause are not disconnected. So it was intriguing for us to bring this here and how can we go about this Nepantla concept today, Tanji?
Hi Rosa. Hello everybody who has joined the Messy Conversations. I do want to pause and note, as you were mentioning, this is our fourth time meeting together for a Messy Conversations to talk about Gloria Anzaldúa's work. And you're right, she's on a lot of syllabi. She's been very influential for me, and I continue to employ her work both in a deeply personal way and in my teaching. I'll talk a little bit about that. Um, so I noted this to the Messy Conversation team. I will note this to everybody. I have been talking with Anzaldúa's work for so long. I risk making a sort of like cognitive shortcut. So if I talk about something as if everybody knows what it is and you don't know what it is, it's okay. Please do ask for clarification. Happy to go back and explain what I had in mind and what I thought I was being clear about. So I just want to preface that. So your question, Rosa, was what is Nepantla? Um,
Well, what is the pausing, the idea of pausing in the face of disorientation,
yeah,
and what the Nepantla concept could be handy to understand that.
yeah. Well, in previous conversations, messy conversations, we've talked a lot with Gloria Anzaldúa's work on the path of conocimiento. And we won't go into too much detail with all of that right now, except to say that it's a seven-stage process that Anzaldúa articulates that is the process of transformation in both like the inner work that we do and the public acts that can happen from that transformation. It's iterative, it's ongoing. With that sort of framework, and thank you, Rosa, for sharing an overview of the stages of the path of conocimiento. Nepantla is the second stage, traveling this path of transformation, of knowing and not knowing. It happens after the first stage, the rupture, right? And or maybe even simultaneous with the rupture. So we're going about our worlds. Everything is normal until it's not. Some sort of rupture happens, and we're thrown from that familiar world into a state of suspense and in between space where the world as we have once known it is receding from view, and the world that maybe is coming into view is there, but not, is coming into view, but it's not here yet. And so it's that in between state. That is Nepantla. Um, and Anzaldúa talks about it in several ways, primarily as it is a state of transformation, whether we want that transformation or not, because once our world as we have known it has ruptured, we can't ever quite get it back the same, though we can spend a lot of energy trying to recreate that world we once knew, right? What Anzaldúa is encouraging for folks, though, is what about the other possibilities that this state of in-betweenness can bring about? It is a disoriented state, but there is that new world or new way of being. It's on the horizon, and what kind of moves can we make to facilitate other forms of transformation since we've already been thrown from a familiar state? That is disorientation, right? I will say when Anzaldúa writes about it, it feels lovely. Nepantla sounds so generative and so exciting and so full of possibilities. When I experience Nepantla, it is terrifying. No matter how many times I've experienced it in my own way, and in between space of, where something is ruptured in my world, it is scary. And so I can spend a lot of time thinking and theorizing about what to do in those moments. And then when I'm in those moments, it feels different, right? And I think part of that is what inspired our conversation today of thinking about what is that? What does that mean? Um, Anzaldúa, in her way of talking about the pausing, she talks about being on opposing banks and holding two opposing forces at the same time, long enough for new insights to emerge. That is a kind of pausing. Again, sounds lovely when she says it. What does it mean to embody that? Um, and then I'll put it in a larger political context. So in January, I was at the National Multicultural Conference and Summit. It's a conference for therapists. I'm actually not a therapist, but I was there as an educator um, who do work in critical multicultural vein, right? So they see their work as therapists as a transformative process, and they want to take in the larger social context in their healing work. And so it's folks who get together for that. I was at this conference. It was a pre-conference workshop, actually. And of course, our current political state was the topic people were talking about because doing multicultural work, doing critical work is um, uh, it is under attack right now, right? People are losing their jobs. Programs where folks could work in this vein, it's happening in education. It's happening with folks who do healing work on college campuses. Suddenly, these centers that we've had for folks, marginalized folks, are being taken away. People are losing their jobs. And it was in that context that one of the presenters mentioned, just said in the process of dialogue, panic moves us into action away from our values. And so thinking about the state of panic that we are feeling, and then how can we, when we feel that urge to get into action, um, if we're in a state where we're just grasping and we're panicking, we can unwittingly move away from our values and what we're doing. And I think that underscores that need for pausing. So I'll say one more thing because I feel like I've talked for a minute. We'll pause and
In the
see
last 5 years.
where folks are. I will say for me, when I think about pausing, I think of it in two ways. One, I'm always just engaging with what does it mean to embody and live the pausing in the state of Nepantla, right? And what does it mean to teach that as an educator? How do I teach the pause? Knowing for myself how scary and disorienting Nepantla can be. What does it mean to pause versus panic and grasp, right? And I'll just underscore something you had said, Rosa. Um, Pausing isn't inactive. It's a very active thing, right? We can pause in very active ways, even though there is that sense of urgency to do something. Pausing is not doing something. You're right. So I'll pause there.
So I really appreciate Tanji because it's putting us in that context of conversations that we have been having in the ambivalence and the precarity of being situated in that line of thinking, like line of conversation, and facing this in the context of education for us is essential to be pretty aware of this especially the ambivalence, like how to grasp it, right? Um, I think that in order to find the generative element in this is situating in the context of the classroom, for example. Uh, I recall these icebreakers that sometimes you use this one stay with me and you were asking about this a few days ago that share about a time when you did not know how to listen to what was being said and how that's gonna lead to this ambiguity, these moments and and um, and yes, I was thinking about how do we leave those situations. For example, if we have a conversation with students in the classroom and you have different voices coming up in the classroom and voices that are against each other, points of view that are not willing to consider the perspective that is set in the room because it needs to understand our own perspective first. So how can we generate a moment of that pause instead of people feeling censored? That would be the equivalent of the inaction, right? Censorship. So that I was thinking when you ask about your question about these icebreakers. To what extent censorship could be like a form of pause or interpreted as pause?
That is interesting, and I think about that a lot. I want to go back a little bit and give some context to that question. Is that okay?
Sure,
Yeah.
please.
In the question of how to teach the pause or holding disorientation, it can be a really difficult thing to do in the classroom. especially if we think of the classroom space as itself a Nepantla space, right? It's a Nepantla space that is so messy that we've had to put a lot of parameters on top of it of how to behave in that space. And then thinking about academia and the presence of the need to be and feel competent, right? Can be something that can pull us out of Nepantla really quickly and pull us away from the generative possibility of the in-betweenness, of the not knowing, that sort of thing. And knowing that as a present force, that sense a need to be competent is a force within the classroom space. And I generate questions, or I try to, that, well, what if we start on ground that is already shaky? What if we start our inquiry into a space that we don't get to be competent? So a question like the one that you repeated of tell about a time you didn't know how to listen to what was being said. So that's some context to that question, and we can play around with that question in a minute. To your question about censorship, actually think about that a lot, because this is in our conversations about pausing, about generative pausing amidst all of this. It is an ambivalent pause for me. Sometimes I do wonder, am I just being inactive while I'm watching all of these things happen, while I'm taking notes, while I'm journaling, while I'm, trying to understand what's going on? And also, there's been plenty of times where I'll speak from a really personal engagement with some of these issues for myself. You can see if you relate, but there's certainly times where I feel, based on the chargedness of a situation of communicating across difference or engaging in larger political issues, where I'm being hailed into a fight that I don't want to have, because I'm very aware that when I'm in fight mode, I'm not listening to what's being said. And I'm pretty certain the other person or the other people aren't listening either. So I find myself moving away from those charged things, not because I don't want to fight. I'm a fighter. It's not because I don't want to fight. It's because I don't want to embody that fighting stance where none of us are listening to each other. I want a different way. And when I move away from those moments, I wonder, to what extent am I self-censoring? So it is a very ambivalent feeling that I have about the approach. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, no, I'm very happy that I moved away from that. Other times I'm like, but if only I said this, or am I being silenced in these ways while I'm trying to figure out a different way of being? I'm not going to bring any clarity to that. I don't have a sense of grounding on that either, but that is something that is present for me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's very relatable. It's relatable, and that's what makes it powerful. When you think in those terms, because we have experienced this need to stand for an idea, that need to look at other ways to do it, or just don't do anything about it for the time being. But that doesn't mean that you're gonna ignore it or put it under the carpet, which is the other element. So censorship is one thing. The other thing is pretend that it's not there. It's another way. But and I wanted to bring up another question, because the other icebreaker that you have shared with me is this about a time when tell me about a time when you change your mind about or perspective on a political issue.
Are you asking me that question or are you talking?
Yeah, we're asking that question to each other. So I can ask it to you. I can ask it to myself. Later we can see what people think about this. Is a time when you change your mind or perspective on a political issue. That journey, just that journey of getting there. I wonder if any insights about that. What that question is important in the context of Nepantla.
Yeah. Okay. So this is one of two questions that we mentioned, right? So I'm happy to address the tell about a time. So this is a question I have given to students as part of an icebreaker, where it's designed to not let us be on sturdy ground. So what's a time when you changed your mind about a political issue? Um, and in posing it to students, in you posing it to me, and us addressing it in front of folks, it's also an invitation to think about your own times when you changed your mind. It's interesting when I designed the questions, I was thinking about like big political, like big ideas, right, that happen like on a public debate kind of stage. And when I think about how I might answer that question, it actually is in a deeply personal way that is simultaneously political, right? So for me, um, one of many times that I've changed my mind on a political issue was one that I didn't realize I needed to change my mind about. So I a couple of years ago was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease. It's a thyroid disease. It's an autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid, and it happens to be hereditary at times. And my mother has it. I've watched her go through a lot of health issues related to it, among other things. And so when I got that diagnosis, I was very resistant to it. I was resistant to being treated for it. And for too long, I was totally mind over matter. If I get enough sleep, if I exercise, if I do these things, I don't need to take medication for it. And my poor partner had to watch me torture myself. Um, in conversation about it, at one point, my partner said, the way that you're approaching this is in really ableist ways. And to me, that's a deeply personal thing where I didn't know I needed to change my mind. I didn't know I needed to rethink this. But I was definitely subscribing to deeply ableist beliefs about my own health and how to take care of it. And I wasn't accepting the help that my body needed. And so it was through that process of kind of reconciling, I realized there's things that I needed to change on a deeply fundamental level that's totally related to big ideas, right? So I was surprised to realize that would be one way that I might answer that question.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I would argue if in case it's useful just for also for the audience, like a larger understanding of what a political issue is. A political issue has to do with is not it's not government or but not only that political parties that kind of stuff. That is this idea of distribution of power that is important for us to remember when we talk about political issues. We're talking about an issue we have with the distribution of power. So and here you are sharing this power and knowledge issue that you were having with this encounter with a diagnosis and that removes all kinds of issues and yeah, it's thank you for bringing that up, Tanji. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking at my end, I was thinking about like a very young, not yet quite familiarized with precisely with sociology frameworks where you can understand distribution of power in a way I had some kind of a issue with silos or with affinity groups when I was very young. Like I felt like well, that's self marginalization. That's just grounding yourself, hiding yourself somewhere in order to don't deal with the larger world. And I was like, I had this understanding, very I would say blind sided understanding of what an affinity group could do. It was just being from the outside, totally right. And then with this Nepantla or this idea of pausing that helps explain how is from the inside is learning the ability to do coalition building when you understand the role of these different circles of power that silos can provide. So I was just thinking how interesting it is that when you really consider using Nepantla or the pause to see, okay, I'm outside of the silo. Let's see if I go inside. How does it look like? So it's just the idea inside and outside. That seems like just an interesting way. So that your question inspired that memory for me. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It actually makes me think of the other question. I don't know if we have time to address the other question.
You
Um,
can address any question you want.
well, the other icebreaker question, what I usually use for, this is one of two that we're talking about today, is tell about a time you didn't know how to listen to what was being said, right? Also a question that was fun to design, very difficult question to
Go back to it.
answer.
Mhm.
And I feel like it is kind of wrapped up in that idea of changing your mind on a political issue.
Mhm.
But I don't know, do you want to do you have anything in mind you could address that question with? A time when you didn't know how to listen to what was being said?
Mm. I probably don't have anything specific, but something that that reminds me constantly of that dilemma, because it's a dilemma, is encountering binary thinking. How encountering binary thinking that if I say right, I also have to mention the word wrong. If I say good, and I also have to say bad. If I say great, I can also say challenge. So every time I see those dichotomies together, it's a little bit of a, well, I have to pause because, but not pausing because it's generative in that moment, but it's pausing because it's exasperating.
Yeah. The binaries and the feeling, the being trapped.
Yeah, the feeling like, yeah, but that's what it comes to mind right now. It's like a binary thinking would be a trigger to be like, okay, what do we do now? Okay, so
Mm.
how can we start like trying to see this? And that's what I appreciate about Anzaldúa. Because Anzaldúa is constantly putting in question the idea that you need to choose like this or this or this or that. It's like an open-ended an invitation to remain open-ended, and and it is inspiring education. You know, it's a blessing to have this perspective brought to education. It's really something. So I don't know. We have a couple of more minutes before we open the room to others, but I wonder if there's anything else here that,
Could I address the question too? Is that a
yes.
time? Because again, it's fun to pose questions. It's a little more difficult to answer these kinds of questions that are designed to throw you off a little bit. I had a moment in thinking about like, well, what are times I know there are all the time. There's things happening that I don't know how to listen to what's being said. But I was brought back again to a really like deeply personal moment that stood out to me, and I think it can be a helpful thing to think with in other situations as well. But you know, my partner and I have been together almost 10 years now, which I don't know where the time went. It's wild to me. But you know, we sometimes get into disputes and we have to like fight about it or whatever. But we've learned to crawl our way out of the struggle by having these moments where we pause and you know, like this is where I'm coming from. I see where you were coming from. And in those moments of being able to hear each other, we can kind of like let go of the things that, you know, we were holding so tightly to long enough to find our way through it. And I bring that up because there are times when we're in a moment of dispute where my partner will give me the thing. They're like, okay, I see where you were coming from when you said this or did that. And, you know, give me some validation. And then they say, can you see where I'm coming from? And I am so attached to my side of things that I have responded, no, I don't. I don't see where you're coming from. Um, and those are times where it's very difficult to listen to what's being said. And I think it's because, you know, on a professional level, on a teacherly level, I can run into things like that all the time, but it's a little easier somehow to navigate those moments to like live up to those standards. But when it comes down to something really mundane, um, you know, where it happens, you know, it's so close to me. It's so much harder to let go of something. Not let go of it like I'm wrong, but just like loosen it up enough to embrace somebody else's reality about something, right? That can be really difficult to do, despite all of my ideals and my efforts of like, I want to listen to the things I don't know how to listen to. That's an example that's come up more than once where like I could not listen. And it was very difficult. And I could see it like in answering no, I knew like I was failing in that living up to my ideal, but it was hard. So I find looking at those tiny moments is that's examples of the inner work, and then what can that mean to apply it in public, like you know the broader, the outer work that Anzaldúa
Mm.
talks about. So
Thank you. No, thank you, Tanji. And just one quick memory that you triggered. Guys, Tanji and I go a long way triggering each other's ideas in other spaces. So just allow me and like allow me with this one. I have a some sort of, I guess it's almost a practice at this point of like a going to the gym in a sense of exposing myself very intentionally to situations that are unintelligible to me. That listening to radio in other language that I don't know the language, but I just like being exposed to that one because it's somehow like at this being in this stage of is a kind of intentional disorientation, but at the same time is like a trying to figure things out, even if you're not gonna figure them out. And that is the gym aspect of it, the training or like self kind of exposure to that. And also with another radio, I like to walk in Los Angeles, which is where I live in Los Angeles, 140 languages and dialects with their corresponding cultural hubs. So you can walk in a store and don't know anything about what is sold in that store. Like I like to walk on those stores and then to figure out what that is, right? And I don't buy anything. I just under. So I think that resonated, your memory resonated with my memory in that sense of being like that exposure to that and being those moments that to me feel safe, but at the same time very frustrating and very disorienting because you don't know if you're gonna get any kind of clarity,
Mm.
and they just accept the lack of clarity as a possibility. And then I think that's my self-training, if we can call it that way. But well, picking up sometime later. But right now we have plenty of wonderful insights here from people. Like first of all, Lisa, would you like to represent your comment? You made a wonderful comment about listening to Camino de Conocimiento. Lisa, can you unpin us?
Hi,
Yes.
Tanji and Rosa. Yeah, listening to the beginning of this, it sounds like rebirthing and giving birth to yourself. And many of Anzaldúa's readings that I've had the opportunity to read because of Antioch, and including in your class, Tanji, I have given birth to myself in so many different ways through understanding conocimiento, to understanding the Huapdalquicua. I know I'm not pronouncing it correctly. The 7 stages of what you spoke of earlier, applying that to myself and how I've changed, understanding what Nepantla is. Even we could be in the center of Nepantla and not realize that we are there until we come out of it. And that is a really enlightening position to be in, because then you can make these changes and you know, spread out. So it really reminds me, and when I think about things and when I have self-reflection, I often think about Nepantla. I often think about the different aspects of who I am, and where can I take that? How can I continue the growth? And how have I not listened to myself? Because I think if we don't begin with listening to ourselves, it might be harder to listen to other people, because we have a tendency of cutting that communication off if we're not present with our own ideas and feelings and what's going on. So that's what I was referring to as I was listening.
Thank you, Lisa. And Holly, you have been making a couple of comments in the chat. We're gonna go with you, Gabriel, in a moment. Holly, can you represent your comments? One about processing and the other one about COVID?
Yeah, so I think they go hand in hand, but I just really thought about pausing for my need to process and like being able to show up with integrity so I'm clear on like what my piece is. And then when you ask the question about times that we've had to change our mind on political ideas, as a mom raising kids during COVID, that was just like one time where it really shifted a lot. You know, I went into COVID believing one thing. I came out with a whole new perspective. Yeah, so that I thought those were really good questions.
No, thank you, Holly. Tanji is gonna come back in a second, thanks to her computer. Their computer gave opportunities for restarting, so it's very timely, like a very Nepantla. So let's live through this pause, but it's not quite a pause because we can just share. Asa left earlier. He had to leave because of a previous commitment, but he left a message here about he said, I love the example of thinking about ableism and ableist views linked to Nepantla, and it made me remember back to times I have been part of political marches, protests, and the collective need to pause. The collective need to pause. Let me see, Tanji's coming in. Gabriel, not forgetting you, Gabriel, just 1 second. Tanji came back. Could you pin Tanji? The new version of Tanji that just came back. Tanji here?
I'm here.
Okay,
frozen.
okay. Yeah, we're here. That's fine.
Now I'm on a pause. Sorry.
You're in a pause. Pausing and pausing. Okay. I was reading what Asa left, but let's go with Gabriel. Gabriel has been patiently waiting for us. Gabriel, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a number of Anzaldúa's material that's been sitting on my bookshelf since uh, for a year and a half or so since but I'm feeling really inspired or encouraged to put that on the top of the priority list after our conversation today. Particularly what piqued my interest, yeah, the language around different ways of being and in between states, and all of it feels very relevant to where we are in the world and how to navigate these times. What I want to ask is specifically around this topic of panic and how this grasping way of being with panic kind of shuts us down moves us to a way that kind of disconnects us from the situation and moves us to respond in a way where we lose some of our faculties of being able to be with another. I'm curious what other ways kind of emerge, or in a world where, panic kind of seems to be the natural response to a panicked situation. I don't know, especially as Rosa was speaking to so many people, so many of these spaces being destroyed. I mean, we've been in like a decade of this, but it's really peaking right now where there's colossal spaces being lost in school campuses and jobs being lost. And it's it's a very panicked state of the world. I'm curious, yeah, what other ways of being kind of emerge um, that align with that transformation and being an activist in the world today. Yeah, I'm curious what thoughts have kind of emerged that,
Thanks,
and
Gabriel,
it
for
doesn't have to
sharing.
just,
Yeah, thank you for the question, the journey of your thoughts. I particularly appreciate you sharing the journey of your thoughts, how they unfold. Like it's really, really useful for a conversation like this to follow that thread that you just built. Tanji, any reflection about that when we're talking about this idea of panic and disorientation? I remember we're talking about and this, Gabriel, I think this is part of the frame that we're dealing with. That is, we are in a context where okay, until recently, there are three main institutions, and I'm seeing this as a sociological framework. That until recently, only three institutions were the main influence on wiring us, our responses to to social things, to cultural things, to shaping us culturally. Like the family, the church, and the school. Those three institutions shaping us, how we do react to things, how we react to panic, how we do this or that. So all this shaped by all this. But in the last part of the 20th century, and especially now, I would say on steroids, we have a third institution that just is taking life of its own. That is media, and within media, social media, which feeds from, and Tanji and I were talking about this last week, like a feed from outrage. Outrage is a commodity these days. If you want to sell and you don't create first a provocation, and I'm talking about politicians, and I'm talking about advertising, and I'm talking about what of this, if you don't use provocation and some kind of trigger, some outrage and fear and violence, then it is assumed that there's no wins. It seems that it's profitable these days to generate that. So when you see that, then what do we do when this is the context where we are operating, right? And it bring us back to pausing. And pausing is, am I being triggered by something that has nothing to do with me, or right, how I'm feeding myself, allowing myself to be part of something that have nothing to do with me. So when I'm here, like doing this kind of exposing myself to this kind of information that has nothing to do with me. So I don't know. It's a long. I don't want to take oxygen in the room because media studies is part of my background. So I'm gonna respond to that immediately, but I'm gonna stop myself, take the back seat, and ask if Tanji, you would like to please contribute from your own angle.
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me okay? Can people hear me?
Mhm,
Yeah?
mhm.
Yeah, okay. All right. Just gotta make sure everything's functioning right now. I think that is a really great question. And I think there are many ways that we should be and need to be engaging with the big mass changes, right? And I don't have like a comfortable response to it, but something for sure that's coming up for me is, thinking back with that sort of quote that presenter shared, or that said, that I quoted, about panic moving us into action away from our values. I think for me, the thing that I've been learning over and over again is the pause is so important. It gives me an opportunity to, as Lisa was saying, listen to myself, right? Like pausing to listen to myself. And when I do, am I acting and am I behaving? Am I thinking in accordance with my values? That to me is one of the most important things to do, is to think about, like, what are my values and what am I doing in this moment of urgency? If I'm moving away from my values and what I'm doing, I need to reassess. And when I say moving away from my values, am I engaging in ways that keep the same issues, us fighting about the same issues instead of transforming them, right? That's where I think of first. Um, in that question in terms of, how do we take back the institutions and all that fun stuff? I think there's many ways we can and should respond to it, but I do think that there's something really, really important about continuing to do that inner work to keep up the stamina I need to be present for that ongoing institutional process, that institutional work. And here I see the messy conversations. I'm sorry, I don't know the person's name who's listed as messy conversations. Said as we all pause, what comes up for me is how do we create structures so we can all pause when needed? I think that's a really helpful question to think with in terms of like, it's not if we can be proactive about the structures to help with the pause, that can also be helpful. If I don't have my emotional resources, it's so much harder to pause, so much easier to get into like panic mode, to move quickly, and so much easier to move away from my values. So I think there's something about building in the structures that can be really helpful there too.
We go in a moment with you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Tanji. Thank you again, Gabriel, for this, bringing this up. We have Erin in the chat. For me, Erin, would you represent your idea yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
So, well, what I was thinking about is like in moments when I'm like truly like activated and in that fight flight, just like filled with fear. What I come back to is my breathing, and it's just a way to like to anchor. And it's, I don't know, when I've gone through some health issues, I always, when I'm in that navigating Nepantla, it's like, it's a way to ground myself, because there's been a lot of Nepantla. And I think when I first read Anzaldúa, when I started school, it was like the most powerful thing I think I had read so far. And it was just, I related to it so much, being between, in limbo, and inhabiting it. And then just the relevance of her work today with what's happening politically. But yeah, the breath, I mean, that's where I take refuge.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rin. Oh. Jacqueline Rose, your hand is there. And now, where are you?
Hello.
Oh.
I was listening carefully, and I was also thinking very hard on what Gabriel was saying. And unfortunately, as I was thinking it, playing devil's advocate as far as the potluck is concerned, and the idea of these spaces that are being taken away right now, that in this modern time, it feels like it is a human experience right now, and it feels like a prototype again, although be it a repetitive prototype, one nonetheless. And the thing that I find very unique is that as these spaces disappear, many are taking the time to create new spaces. There's a lot of new spaces that exist that may not have existed or should exist and become stronger because of the circumstances that many of us have to face now. So I think often when we speak to the Nepantla and the pause in it, that it's not always the negative aspect that is the knee-jerk reaction. Sometimes it can be a positive reaction to find out that a person may feel inside themselves that they are straying away from their ideas, possibly a sense of ignorance, possibly a sense of just not necessarily being aware, and that education can lead them to a place that they become a lot stronger in their sense of self. And I think that in particular to the clashes that the powers that be want us to have, to not realize that we are more the same than different. So now that we know that we can exist in the same spaces, we can go to the same places, we can start moving towards the idea. I finished Bell Hook's Salvation, so I feel like we're moving towards a different type of salvation because we have to pause and think about how we feel when we see a child get arrested, or how we feel something happens because of media and social media. And those feelings don't make us feel good. And what does that say about ourselves, that we're standing on one side or the other? How we feel and how we think this idea in our mind plays out, there could be a great difference. And what are we going to do about it? And that can often bring more people together than apart, because that's one of the biggest icebreakers that we have, are bringing people in a classroom together, realizing, starting with the broad question: you live on the East Coast, you live on the West Coast, you live in the middle, you like spaghetti, you like dogs. It narrows it down to what we enjoy, what we like, and what we do that's the same. And then that leads to a communalism, as in the community that Rosa spoke of, for us to come together and build upon being together and moving together in a progressive way. So I like the idea of it. I think the pause is necessary. And I think even though things are not as happy as people are viewing it right now, they're still loving it in a way. I think there's going to be a different kind of love that comes out of it. If that makes that, yeah, that's where I'm ending it on the love. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm. 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 Um, I think we probably mentioned this with Tanji or with others about I'm coming to see now in retrospective the pandemic as a big Nepantla moment. It was a pause. The world was put in pause. But we were not aware that we were in Nepantla. It was just something that was like at the end of the world, like whatever it was. But I had an encounter, a very casual encounter with a neighbor recently, and I was commenting about what Gabriel was saying, this feeling of oh my God, this moment, wherever I think about this moment is just like. And then, in a very unassuming way, my very humble neighbor said, "Don't you think the pandemic gave us a lot of the tools that we need to face whatever is coming?" And I was listening to that voice so softly. And she knows that I'm a kind of a nerdy kind of person. And she said, "The pandemic gave us the syllabus." And I said, "Oh, the syllabus. If the pandemic is the syllabus, then what is the learning?" So I keep going back and forth to that, because I think we learn a lot about ourselves and a lot about others and and we saw the true colors of others. We saw so many things during the pandemic that it's interesting to revisit that in terms of Nepantla. And And I would like to do that in probably in another session because it requires like a more collaborative, like everybody brings something of your learning of the Nepantla in the COVID, what we learn about our relationship with panic, our relationship with others, our relationship with trust, and all these other elements that also came up in other pieces of today's conversation. But I wonder if there any resonates anything with this, Tanji, like trying to apply Nepantla to COVID.
Well, first, thanks for sharing that quote from your neighbor. I wrote it down. The pandemic gave us the syllabus. I'm going to be chewing on that for a while.
Oh, thank you, because I need a companion to do that.
Yeah, I mean, because that is precisely, I mean, it's also made me think of another thing that Lisa had said is sometimes we don't know we're in a potluck till we are out of it and we look back on it. I think we get to do that regardless of how we moved during, lockdown and all those things. We now have retrospect to continue to work with, to look at ourselves, our actions, look at the collective stuff, and continue to make sense of it. So we are studying it like a syllabus. And it does, I think, give us a lot of guideposts to work with. And in that case, it's very Anzaldúan to think of the pandemic as both a rupture and a gift. It's not something we necessarily wanted. It brought about a lot of horrific things. And how do we put the pieces back together again in new ways where we can learn from it? We can transform, we can do something else with it. I think, as Jacqueline said, a lot of folks are already doing that in really powerful ways. And it's always helpful to be reminded of that. And in that line, I think last year, when we talked about Anzaldúa, I also talked a lot with Naomi Klein's work on the shock doctrine and shock and how to navigate that. And then I think you had mentioned Doppelganger. That is another really great book to read in terms of thinking about the pandemic because she performs some really important inner work, Naomi Klein does, in Doppelganger to look at both the mirror images that we have that seem to be right versus left, and how both of them are deeply entwined with the shadow world, which is Anzaldúa uses that language as well. Post 9/11, she wrote an article, "Let Us Be the Healing Wound," where she wanted us to engage deeply with the shadow side of the U.S. and colonialism and racism, to engage with that sort of big level panic or rupture in a different transformative way. And that's exactly what we're seeing happening now. All of the ruptures that came from the rupture of the pandemic that came out socially, politically, all of those things, they're all deeply interrelated, and doing inner work, doing personal and collective shadow work, very important. So those are my thoughts. Not all of them, but the ones I could get out right now.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, it can keep going. I want to acknowledge that it's 11:59. Some folks might need to leave at 1 p.m. because they scheduled for 1 hour to be with us. And thank you guys. If you have to leave, thank you. We won't hold you accountable for leaving us at 1, but we can stay a little longer for those that want to hang out. In case we keep it, these ideas are like the open-ended ideas, so there's no resolutions or kind of a conclusive elements. It's more inspiring to see what we take from this and keep going. So we can stop recording now and then just stay with the people that stay here.